afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. As always, I am your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hello, everybody.
And as always, if you would, I say and always too much, and I think I noticed this last week.
And you mentioned it last week.
Mentioning it this week again. I'm sorry, guys. So here's the thing, Matt. Every time I say as always,
I get to kick you.
You get to kick me.
Awesome.
So if you would like to kick me, email podcast@dfchurch.com and you say as always too much, and then you can come over to our church and kick me. No, but seriously, if you'd like to get a hold of us, please email podcast@dfchurch.com. And if you haven't done so already, please take a minute, like and subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this podcast. We got a fun show today for you as we get ready for
exciting.
The holiday this week for Easter. But let's start with our In the News segment.
Excellent.
Now, the maybe bigger piece of news, I don't like to get political too often, like overly political. And we were talking recently about this, like what is, we've even had a great episode of this podcast, like how do you balance faith and politics? But I think it's right now a pretty big story, which is Donald Trump was indicted on 34 counts.
Yep.
Now, looking at the indictment and looking at lawyers, because I'm not a lawyer, but looking at credible lawyers' reactions to it, it seems like it's a lot of indictments for the one thing.
Right.
But it's like every time he wrote a check or signed a thing, they counted as a separate count.
Yeah.
Now, again, to not get too political, but it is interesting that this is the first time a former president has been indicted for a crime like this. And I think there's a couple interesting takeaways. Because first of all, obviously, I don't think any politician should be exempt from investigation into crime.
Yeah.
Always look into all of these. Now with this one, what makes it a little more interesting is we're coming up on an election and this guy's running for re-election. And so it gives it a much more political motivation. And we have a comparable incident of the exact same thing happening on the other side. And we saw what happened. So what I mean by that is, all right, so let's just jump in. So this indictment all is about Donald Trump paying off Stormy Daniels.
Right. To not go public with
talk about
an affair they had.
Yep. And that part itself, that's fine. You can, if you're rich, you can pay people for silence all you want. It's a weird thing, but you can give people...
Legally speaking, this is allowed. Yes.
You can pay people.
Yep.
What the problem is did it come from campaign funding?
Right.
And was it used for, as a campaign expense?
Right.
Which is illegal.
Right.
Because you can't use something to politically motivate. You're not supposed to do something that can affect politically or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, what we did see happening, most of the times, this would be a smaller crime, like a misdemeanor, you'd pay a fine. And in fact, that's what happened with Hillary Clinton.
Right.
So in the same thing, she used campaign funds, lied about it to fund what was called the Steele dossier, which was a piece of misinformation to negatively impact Trump. And so when they found her campaign doing this, they just gave her a fine. They paid the fine. They moved on. So given that it's pretty much the exact same scenario on both sides, but this one they're saying it's up to 30 years in jail or something like that.
Because they're classifying it as a felony instead of a misdemeanor.
Because they bumped it up. Yep. Now, I was watching somebody on TikTok and they said, imagine another country where this happened. What would we think about it? Which is imagine Putin. You're in Russia. There's an election coming up, and there's a contender who's coming up against him. So his group takes some charges that have, his own side has only paid a fine for, brings them all against this guy and threatens him with a lot of jail time.
Right.
We would consider that a pretty bad look.
Right.
Democratically, it looks so much more politically motivated. So I think it's not that, when we say this is probably not a great thing, it's not that we don't think Donald Trump should be responsible for any crimes he may commit.
Right.
But it does look bad in terms of trying to influence an election because you don't like a guy.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't come across as like consistent and applicable. So that's kind of what's going on in the world right now.
There's like crazy reactions from like every side too.
Yeah.
The presiding judge, him and his family have received multiple death threats from people,
right?
Who are, on one extreme end, and then on the other extreme end, it's almost like Christmas morning for them. Like the celebrations that happened. I'm like, it's just weird.
It's really weird, and it doesn't seem either side is good. I will say, and a lot of people have said this, I think pushing through on this will ultimately only help his chances at re-election, because I think a lot of people are going to see this and be like, this doesn't seem right. This seems so political that that's just going to be a fuel for his re-election.
Interesting.
So we're going to see, because I can't imagine, because the other thing is that the statute of limitations is theoretically passed on these crimes. They only have like a 5-year window, and it's been 6.
Oh, interesting.
And so I don't even know how
that's weird
they were able to file it. I think there's some like loophole they're trying to say like this still, but it's a 5-year statute of limitations on it, which seems like you wouldn't even be able to then prosecute. Like I'd imagine if I was a lawyer for Trump, that would be the first thing you file, right? Is like, throw out the lawsuit, throw out the whole thing, not lawsuit, throw out the charges, because, so like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I have watched a lot of Law and Order. And so I know the very first thing you do is you file a motion to dismiss the charges based off the statute of limitations. And then you're going to, some backroom deals and stuff.
I had also heard that the next hearing is not until December now.
Oh my goodness.
And so the judge, heard everything on the state. Like Trump went, he turned himself in, pleaded not guilty. And then the next hearing was scheduled, I thought I read, for December, which seems crazy because that pushes it out even further.
Well, so are they trying to, you can still run for office while under investigation and even have a trial. This is what's weird. What happens if he wins the presidency and then gets convicted
and jail time or whatever?
And jail time.
Vice president becomes president.
Is that what happens?
Yep.
Because it's not like he can issue a pardon for himself, because it's not a federal offense. This is state level that they're charging him.
Right.
And he can only pardon federal crimes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's really weird. If you are more political than us and you know what would happen in that situation if a president is elected. Because
what a wacky world we live in.
Here's the thing. You can be elected and then commit a crime and be impeached and removed from office.
Right.
But if you're convicted of a crime while, like, let's say he gets convicted and sentenced to jail on December 20th, 2024, and he's won the re-election at this point.
Okay.
What happens?
He's never sworn in then at that point, right?
Yeah. He wouldn't be.
Because, that would be.
But he won.
January. Right.
Whoa. If you know more about politics, please write podcast at dfchurch.com, because I honestly don't know the answer.
That's really, next hearing is set for December 4th.
Goodness, that's really drawn
And so
out.
it is very possible that this situation's not resolved before the election.
What's really funny speaking of Law and Order, when I watch that, it's like they arrest the guy, they have the hearing the next day, and then the trial starts, and it's awesome.
Right.
Don't you have
one day's all you need.
Don't you have a right to a speedy trial in the Constitution?
Well, maybe they don't want it speedy.
Like
both
Trump's
sides
people
want more time.
Why would you want more time?
Bring up more
let's
charges.
Get it over.
I don't know.
Just get it. If I was Trump, I'd say, no, we're not waiting until December. Hearing is tomorrow. Let's do this. I have a right as a constitutional, and I'm Trump, and I can just say whatever I want anyway. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so on that note, we're going to jump into today's topic because it's completely not related at all. So those of you who are our listeners, last December, there was a podcast that we recorded that you unfortunately did not hear. It was really sad. We had technical issues. We lost the entire episode and did not have a chance to re-record it. But what this podcast would have been would be popular Christian Christmas, myths. Myths. That's a hard word to say and enunciate properly on a microphone. But we recorded this whole thing and it was great. We talked through all these different popular misconceptions that go around with Christmas. Now, because that got lost and we didn't have time to record it, we were really sad. we're pushing that till next Christmas. We're going to record a similar episode this following Christmas. But we thought, why wait till then? So we'll talk about Christmas today. I'm joking. We will talk about Easter today. And we thought we would talk about some popular Easter myths today.
Sweet.
So as we bring up some of the popular myths around Easter, Matt, you'd found an article that actually has a few listed. And I thought, let's go through this article. Let's talk about it. You and I have both been researching this lately. Anyway, there's some interesting misconceptions, I think, around some of the holiday. And so this is, I thought, a great chance. Let's talk through it and let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one, Easter is a pagan moon or spring festival that Christians took over.
Oh, I hear that a lot. I mean, if you're on any social media right now, you'll probably find some Christian content creators saying a very similar thing.
So this myth is all about the origins of Easter, right?
Right.
And what that means, what that looks like. A lot of it is, I think, because of the date.
Right.
If you didn't know, Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox.
That's so complicated. Like, why not just line it up with Passover like Jesus did?
Right. And so because it's related to the moon, the date, the timing of it, the assumption then is, it's some sort of like lunar celebration, some sort of like moon god or goddess that we're actually worshiping here.
Now, when we say Easter, are we talking about specifically that name, or are we talking about just the celebration that Christians do this time of year?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So this myth that's written kind of covers like all the origins of it. So let's maybe look at the timing first.
Okay.
And then we'll look at the name.
Okay. So the timing. And this is what's kind of funny is it seems like a lot of holidays are around some of these bigger like seasonal things anyway, right? So Passover, if we're going to say that Easter is a copy of the spring celebrations and that we just stole it from the pagans, well, you could also make the case that it's just a copy of Passover and we stole it from the Jewish people because Passover is occurring around this time of year as well. And so I think that you have to be able to prove not just a connection timing wise, but an actual causal effect. Like one thing that we say a lot is that correlation does not equal causation. And what that means is just because two things correlate doesn't mean that one of them caused the other. Like you can look at humorous examples of this all the time. There's like the number of Nicolas Cage movies released and the number of people who drown in swimming pools. And if you look at those 2 points of data, they follow each other. When one goes up, the other goes up. And when one goes down, the other one goes down. And so you could, if correlation was the same as causation, you would say the more Nicolas Cage acts, the more people drown in swimming pools.
Right.
But that doesn't actually follow. Just because, but again, as one goes up, the other goes up. One goes down, the other goes down. It looks like there's a relationship there, but there's not. And so we got to be very, I think if you wanted to say that Christians just were copying a pagan holiday and that there was this causal effect, you'd have to be able to show that, not just show that they were both at the same time of year.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Easter's considered like a movable feast is what they call this type of celebration because the date changes, right?
Right.
And that idea I've heard from people on social media and the internet and even in person, because the date changes, that's how you know it is a pagan festival and not a Christian thing. But movable feasts, this is ancient biblical
that doesn't
tradition that happens. And so when I've heard people say that and I'm like, that
aren't the Jewish feasts movable?
Right.
Like Passover is not always on the exact same day. It's also based off moon.
It's also
things,
based
right?
on like so and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, just you and I separately, Nathan, this whole idea of because it's associated with the season, it must be pagan. No, like humans have organized our lives based upon what happens in nature since the dawn of man.
Yeah.
Like when it's daylight, we do our work outside. When
Right.
it's night, we don't. Like
Right.
that's not because we're worshiping the sun.
Right. Just because we do something that is also done by a pagan person doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it is a pagan practice.
Right. And so spring is a time of new life.
Yeah.
Whether you worship pagan gods and goddesses or not, we know that
Right.
during spring, our trees are starting to bloom and like there's some green grass peeking through some of the snow. And like we know that things are coming back to life there. And yeah, that has nothing to do with any sort of worship or act of celebration. And so, like you mentioned, the Passover, the night Jesus was betrayed and put on trial, he celebrated this special meal with his disciples, with his friends. And a lot of the origins of Easter actually come from some of those Jewish traditions.
Right.
And we'll talk about that as we get into maybe some of these other traditions and myths within Easter. But yeah, the calendar thing I get it. Why not just have it always associated? Resurrection Sunday is exactly 1 week after Passover every year. But does the date really matter? Like we'll get to this December when we talk about December 25th.
Right.
There's not a single person on the planet that's not insane. I apologize if this is you right now that says, yes, absolutely, Jesus was born on December 25th.
Now, here's a fun fact. This is a little bit of a spoiler. But I was looking at this. There is good evidence to believe that the early Christians did actually think that they didn't just pick a pagan day, but they did think that because, and here's why. There was a tradition back in the ancient world that the day that you die will always be the same as the day you were conceived. It was like a weird thing where it's like when you die, that was the day you were conceived.
Interesting.
And so Christians looked at when the crucifixion happened and they counted forward 9 months and found December 25th as a date.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where there's
There you
at least
have it.
good evidence that the date was picked. And that, again, just because something correlates to something, you have to prove that it's causally related.
So throughout history, there have been a handful of different pagan festivals celebrated around the start of spring.
Yep.
And so then the assumption is, well, because of when Easter falls, it must be related to those pagan festivals.
Right.
But do you know how we picked the date for Passover? Rather how in ancient biblical times
in the
Passover
Bible it
happened?
says it's in the month of Nisan, not the car. And it's exactly in the middle of the month when the moon is full.
Yeah.
It's based off a full moon.
Yep. You
And
find
so-
the first full moon after that spring equinox.
Yep.
Weird that we pick the date for Easter after the first full moon after the spring equinox.
Right. Now, why
like the
don't they
same
always
thing.
why don't they always match?
Right, because the full moon it varies.
Right.
The
But
spring
no, why
equinox
don't we
is
always
the
match
same.
with the Passover with Easter?
Right, because we go the first Sunday after the first full moon. Passover starts the night of the full moon, I believe. Or the night after.
Passover isn't always on a Sabbath.
Right. The start of Passover is not always on a Sabbath. But yeah, so this year I think it was
Now it's all clicking. And so but then there are years where that happens, like the year of Jesus, it was the Passover, and then there was a Sabbath immediately after Passover that time.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't happen every year, but it happens often. Okay, so let's get into the name.
Right.
Because really it's just English and German that you potentially have as a Christian, maybe an argument for some trouble for the name. We'll get into it.
We will.
But in other countries, many European countries, the translation of the word they use to celebrate Easter comes from Passover.
Right. They use it's Pascha, right?
Yep.
And that's the world. That's what this festival celebration.
Yeah.
holiday.
That's what this holiday is.
They call it that.
They call it
Pascha for Passover.
Yep.
Now, we have Easter.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you, I don't know if this is in your myths about Easter article, but I can tell you in my research I found, there are some people who will claim it comes from Ishtar, which is an ancient Mesopotamian fertility goddess. Now, the only reason you can make that argument is because Easter and Ishtar in English sound slightly the same.
Right.
There's actually no causal connection. And to say that, like, when people in Germany started calling it Easter, they had in mind ancient Mesopotamian deities.
Right.
Is such a stretch.
Yes.
It's one of those linguistic coincidences. It's not an actual causal connection.
Right.
So we can throw out, if you've heard that it comes from the goddess Ishtar and her fertility, throw that out, because there's no semblance, there's no historical reason that we can actually get to that at all.
Right.
Now, we do need to remember that English is a Germanic language. And like you said, that's why in Germany and English is where we're talking about these things. So when we start looking at where the word comes from, we have a couple choices. The first word is from this word in Saxon language, Germanic, Proto-Germanic language, Eostre. I don't know how you actually say it because I don't speak ancient German.
Right.
But this comes, we get a reference from this from a guy named Bede the Venerable.
Yes.
And he was he lived in the 700s, so 8th century Christian monk and writer.
Yeah. And I actually have his quote from his writing.
So let's hear this quote.
Okay. Eosterimath has a name which is now translated Paschal month, and which was once called after a goddess of theirs named Eoster. In whose honor feasts were celebrated in that month. Now they designate that Paschal season by her name, calling the joys of the new rite by the time-honored name of the old observance. This is the one mention in all of history of the name Eoster.
Yes.
Eostre. I don't even know how you pronounce
this goddess's name. We have this reference.
And that's it.
That's it.
And yet, from a lot of interactions I've had with people, this is like cold hard fact and truth for them. And therefore, like, as a Christian, I can't use the name Easter because this one person mentioned this one thing that he thinks he heard. What's interesting is he says that name Eoster Moneth has a name which is now translated Paschal month, and Paschal is a translated word.
Right. So what he says is
Passover,
basically Easter month. So they had a month called Easter month, in which we celebrated the resurrection.
Yep.
And he says Easter month is named after this goddess Easter, basically. But now instead of that, we celebrate the resurrection. What's interesting about that is that I think it just having a pagan name associated with it, if that's our criteria to say we can't do it, I think that goes a lot wider than we might realize.
Every day of the week.
So, for instance, when we say Good Friday, Friday means Frigg's Day, another Germanic goddess.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how you could make the argument that Easter we shouldn't say, but Good Friday we can.
Right.
Because both of those
it's just based upon a name.
Right. Now, I will say the other argument I've heard then would be, well, you're trying to lessen it being about the resurrection. And now instead of it being about the resurrection, you're using this pagan word.
Right.
But again, couldn't you say the same about Good Friday? You're not calling it a crucifixion. You're calling it a good day and a good pagan day.
Right.
So
that's weird.
I would say instead of the word you're using, look at what you're doing. Like, are you celebrating the death and resurrection of Jesus?
Yeah.
Then the name of the day that you're
Doesn't
calling
really
it is less important than what you're actually doing.
Absolutely. So then let's get into what we're celebrating. Let's go into some other.
I wanted one more real
myths?
quick note.
Okay.
There is some scholarly work that links the word Easter not to the goddess, but to the Germanic word for
dawn
resurrection.
in the east.
No, I was going to say resurrection,
okay.
Which might come into where then it
Where
means
that dawn
dawn
is.
in the east
Yeah,
and
because it's
springtime
from
and
in
things
Latin,
like that.
it's in albus. And alba is the phrase dawn. In Old High German, it became eostarum, meaning like high dawn in the east.
Right.
And a dawn is like a rising of, which is interesting. I never connected those pieces before.
Yeah. So there's I have a quote from you. It's a translation of the works of Eusebius, and this guy, the scholar who's writing his translation, talks about using the word Easter, and he says our English word Passover, happily in sound and sense, almost corresponds to the word Hebrew Pesach, of which is a translation of Exodus. The Greek Pascha, formed from the Hebrew as the name of the Jewish festival, applied invariably in the primitive church to designate the festival of the Lord's resurrection, which took place at the time of Passover. Our word Easter is of Saxon origin and of precisely the same import with its German cognate Ostern. The latter is derived from the Old Teutonic form of Auferstehen, which means resurrection. The name Easter is undoubtedly preferable to Pascha or Passover. So he says you should actually call it Easter instead of Pascha, because one is talking about the Passover, but what we're celebrating is
actually the resurrection,
which is where that word comes from.
Super interesting.
So if you want to use the word that means resurrection, Easter is actually better.
That's really interesting. Okay. How about Easter eggs?
Oh, those are
because that's one of
pagan
the big
fertility.
Right. One of the big traditions that is associated with Easter is this idea of decorating eggs and hiding them and unburying them when they're hidden all over your yard. And so where do these traditions come from? Why do some Christians still participate in that? Why, as a church, are we having a celebration tomorrow where we're doing an Easter egg hunt, knowing that those are just an object of worship for fertility?
It's all just paganism, right? No.
So I think an assumption.
Again, just because you can draw a connection doesn't mean you can show a causation. And so what you need to do is you need to look at the history of, well, how is this done by who? When did we start using Easter eggs? Just because an egg can be a symbol of fertility doesn't mean it is.
Right.
And again, some people will tie that. They'll say, see, Ishtar, whose symbols were eggs and bunnies. That's why it's Easter and Ishtar and blah, blah, blah. But again, there's no evidence actually that Ishtar used eggs or bunnies as her symbols.
So we just celebrated a Seder meal, traditional Passover Seder dinner. What was one of the items that was on the traditional Passover Seder meal plate?
Hard-boiled egg.
Okay.
Which was added, Rabbi Jack was talking about, it was added a little in like the first couple hundred years after the temple was destroyed.
Right.
Okay.
But been around for quite a while now. Right. And in that Passover meal, the egg is used to symbolize essentially this new life.
Right.
And then Rabbi Jack also went on to talk about how the subtle symbolism from the egg that the Jews often miss, but it's right in front of them, is related to the Trinity, because some ways that people try to explain it, though it falls short, is that there's three parts of the egg, but it's still just one egg. So the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, the 3-in-1 type of thing. And so the egg has always been associated with Passover.
Right.
For much, much longer than we've associated eggs with like pagan rituals.
Right. But let's talk about how did it become a part of Easter traditions.
Yeah.
And it looks like, again, different places have different things. But one of the things we noticed is that as Christians would celebrate Lent, the time coming up to Easter, they would forgo animal products like eggs, meat, things like that, except for fish on Fridays, which Fish Fridays sounds like a fun tradition we can bring back.
Let's bring it back.
Love it. So we need a Long John Silver's here in town.
Oh, man.
Have you ever, as a side note, have you ever eaten at a Long John Silver's?
No.
I have not either, I don't think. So, as Christians
eggs.
would celebrate the time of Lent, and they would be foregoing those, especially in an older place where you don't have modern refrigeration and things like that. You could hard boil your eggs as a way to preserve them longer,
Right?
And then decorate them because you would get a special treat at the end of Lent. You'd get to eat these again. So let's decorate them. Let's make them a treat. Let's make it something you have to find.
And they would only decorate the ones that the hens laid during Lent.
See,
because
cool.
those were the special eggs that are being set aside for them when Lent season is over.
Right.
Really interesting.
So really it comes from, now that's an interesting thing. It comes from a more Catholic tradition then, right? Lent.
Right. Yep.
How much of the pushback against this is not pushback because it's pagan, but because it's actually Catholic?
From the Christians I've talked to that have pushed back against this, not one has ever mentioned, well, this was a Catholic tradition, so we can't do it. Which is really interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
Have you ever encountered...
I'm wondering, well, if the general sentiment against it ever had that as a start, and then it was like, but we don't want to actually say that, so let's blame it on the pagans. That's just conjecture. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think that's good. All right, so then let's go on to the bunnies.
Okay.
Because bunnies are known for being cute and being in kids' books and being soft and fluffy.
Yeah. First of all, can we just talk about how creepy this whole concept of an Easter bunny is?
Yeah, we can talk about the Easter bunny as a creepy idea.
Yeah. To start, we talked about this on our youth group lesson last week.
Right, because we were looking at pictures of creepy Easter bunnies.
Of Easter bunnies, whether they're cute or creepy. These are the bunnies where a human is dressed up in a costume and kids are sitting on their lap.
Yeah.
So that whole idea is creepy to begin with.
Right.
But why is there a bunny laying eggs?
That's a good question.
Because either you have a bunny who's going against the way the bunny was created, because bunnies don't lay eggs, if you didn't know this, or the bunny stole the eggs.
Maybe they just steal them, yeah.
And either way, this is a little bit weird. This is the whole, like, Santa Claus coming through the chimney.
Right.
A little bit creepy. Sees you when you're sleeping and awake. A little bit creepy. This bunny rabbit gives me some of those same vibes.
Same creepy vibes. Well, I can tell you, this is kind of a funny source. There's an episode of the show South Park.
Okay.
And it's basically a big parody of the Da Vinci Code. So if you've read the Da Vinci Code, it's really silly, and it's all about how, Jesus actually, the Holy Grail was actually his bloodline, and he has descendants, and like all this stuff, right? And like Catholic conspiracies and things like that. So this episode of South Park is making fun of that, and the secret group that Randy is a part of is called the Hair Club for Men.
Okay.
But it's like hair like a rabbit. And it's all a conspiracy about Easter. And the whole idea is that he's like, why is there an Easter bunny? And the dad's like, well, you're getting too close to the truth. You don't want to know about the Hair Club for Men, because they have determined that Peter, the first pope of the Catholic Church in their ideology, so Peter the disciple, an apostle, was actually a rabbit. That's the big secret they're hiding. And that's where Easter bunnies come from. And that's why the Pope hat looks like that, to hide the ears, because of Peter Rabbit. And it's a really funny kind of poking fun at like the crazy conspiracies of like the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that is their explanation for why rabbits are a part of Easter.
Okay. Weird. So from everything I've read and seen, the Easter hare was a German tradition.
It's always
the Germans. They have all these wacky traditions. When they immigrated to America, they brought them with them. So the assumption is sometime in the 1700s, there was this tradition that the German immigrants brought of an egg-laying hare called Osterhase, kind of like Santa Claus.
Okay.
And their children made nests in which this creature could lay its colored eggs. The custom spread across America. Decorated baskets replaced the nests of old. And instead of just eggs, you get chocolate, sweets, and gifts and stuff. So we like evolved on some of these traditions. But Jacob Grimm wrote a book on German
like the Grimm
myths.
fairy tales.
In 1835, he wrote this. He says, the Easter hare is unintelligible to me. Jacob, I knew we got along. But probably the hare was the sacred animal of Ostara. Ostara Interesting note on that.
Right.
Ostara was made up for Grimm fairy tales.
Oh, interesting.
Based upon Eostre, the goddess that we talked about a little bit ago. So when people associate the name Easter with Ostara specifically, you just know right away they don't know what they're talking about, because that's literally just a fairy tale goddess that was created by the Grimm brothers.
That's funny.
Anyway, so Ostara seems therefore to have been the divinity of the radiant dawn of upspringing light, a spectacle that brings joy and blessing, whose meaning could easily be adapted by the resurrection day of the Christian's God. So he's using words like probably and seems, and this is written in 1835, long after a lot of these traditions are already well established, not just in Germany, but all across America too.
Right.
There's other stuff really dating back to the 6th century in Europe, where there were symbolic hairs intertwined in some churches' celebrations, but nobody, it seems like, from what I can tell, nobody really knows why the Easter rabbit happens.
Where they actually came up with it.
Yeah, but most people assume it's German related, from some German folklore, not as a part of worship to the goddess of fertility,
right?
But just related to fun. It seemed like they made up this story.
It was just so fun.
Kind of like not Saint Nicholas, but like Santa Claus,
right?
Where if you're good, I bring you gifts.
Right.
The Easter Bunny, if you're good, I bring you gifts, type
Eggs.
of thing. Kind of fun. And a few months after Christmas, so I'm ready to go again for some more treats that I don't deserve.
I love it.
And I've seen some pictures that are very well photoshopped of this goddess Eostre, the goddess of fertility, sex, and war, I think is what she's associated with.
Wow.
And these well photoshopped images show her, a statue of her, with like rabbits around her feet. And so that's where the assumption of, well, we're worshiping that goddess by using the Easter Bunny comes in. Turns out the actual statues of this goddess, her animal is a lion.
Oh.
Bunnies aren't ever associated with her until we get into our modern world today, where people can make up whatever you want and make it look real because technology is awesome.
Yep.
And terrifying like that.
Yep.
But yeah, so if anything, it's the lion that you would associate with this goddess, not the hare.
Right.
It's just another element of what has like seeped into people's thoughts as truth that aren't actually based on truth.
Right. And it's like, it's like when you're a kid and you're at school, around the schoolyard, and somebody just says like, oh, did you know that this comes from this? And then you all just kind of believe it. And then you grow up thinking that that's true. It's like, there's a lot of things that people just say without actually supporting it.
Right.
But it sounds reasonable enough that we just kind of believe it.
Right. Well, I heard this once when I was a kid, and therefore it must be true.
Well, and it makes sense. Right? Like it makes enough sense.
Right.
And there's another one, maybe not quite podcast.
You can make those like logical leaps, I guess.
Right. Like there's one, it's not quite podcast appropriate, but where a common swear word people will say is an acronym for this. And they'll say something like that, and they say that's what they put on people's graves when they did this certain thing, and that's where we get that word.
Oh, okay.
100% fake, but that acronym
sounds reasonable.
Fits the letters, and it seems like something you do, and that's why we have that word. Okay, and so you believe it.
Okay.
Similar ideas. All right, we're running long today. Do we have how many more do we have on this article?
Those are probably the big ones, I think. I mean, you can talk about other traditions, like where did Easter lilies come from?
That's a thing.
Why do we eat ham on Easter?
That one's just funny because
Jesus was Jewish.
Well, that's like to celebrate that we're no longer law.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
All right, I'm here for it. I think we're having steak this year, so
I think we are
some
too.
tri-tip maybe. I think the rest are just kind of silly. Those three, just kind of like the name and origin, and then eggs and bunnies are the ones that like, ones. Because Easter and egg and bunny, you as a Christian can't do. I think we just hopefully helped you recognize that you can.
Right.
Now,
feel free to celebrate, have fun.
Yeah. Don't the point of Easter
Right.
comes from what maybe the origins of that word, it sounds like, might be. It's the resurrection of Jesus. So let's celebrate Jesus and celebrate hard. Right. And let's have some fun and enjoy time with family.
Yep.
And do that really well too. As you're like collecting Easter eggs this year, there's several things you can think about. You can be reminded, because like when I hide them, I'm kind of burying them under and around things. So remember the resurrection, the empty tomb, as you're pointing that out, as you're opening up the eggs, emptying them out. Like, keep your heart, mind focused on Jesus. But Jesus never said, if you follow me, you must be a prude and have zero fun the rest of your life.
Right. It's kind of like the Christmas conversation. It's like, remember what Christmas is really about. That doesn't mean you can't open presents or have a Christmas tree.
Right. Yeah.
Some people say it does, but that's
you're allowed
silly.
to have fun. And before we get into the AI stuff, maybe you're listening to this and you have kind of given up on church. You've given up on Jesus. Can I just invite you to give him another shot? Like this year. So if you're listening to this the day it's released, this is Friday. The day after tomorrow is a great day for you to come back and just give it another shot. Like, first, and we've talked about this on our show many times, like, yes, we understand that as people in the church, we maybe have hurt you or failed you. But the good news is we're not Jesus. We're not the Savior. Jesus is. And the evidence clearly points to Jesus. And we can talk about that on another podcast maybe. But yeah, give it a shot again.
Right.
Let this year be the year that you say, you know what? I'm going to let the past die. Like
Kylo Ren?
Like Kylo Ren says. I'm going to move on from that and recognize that, okay, maybe, just maybe there's something to this Christianity thing. Maybe Jesus is who he said he was. Like, investigate it. Give it another shot this year. If you don't have a church that you go to and you're here in town in Fort Collins, Colorado, or Northern Colorado, join us at Discovery Fellowship. If not, find a church nearby that you can go to. Ask your neighbors, ask your coworkers where they go. Because if you go with someone you know, you can ask questions.
That's true.
When you're all done. So if you don't have that people, you can email us. You can ask us questions.
Yep.
Podcast@dfchurch.com.
Church.com. Or you can also watch us online at dfchurch.com and type your questions in the chat there. If you cannot find a church or you can't get out of the house for some reason.
Yeah. Only use, honestly, guys, use our online stream if you can't be in person somewhere.
Right.
There's so much value and necessity for that interpersonal relationship and contact. God has wired us and designed us for that. So find a local church to be a part of.
Or you can use, if you're going to use our stream, invite people over. It's almost like a little house church. Like, invite your neighbors, coworkers, friends into your house, watch our live stream together, and then interact, have lunch.
Have some lunch and talk about
the sermon.
I love
that is great also. There's lots of ways to, if for some reason, if you like our stuff here, great. We love that you're here and you're watching with us. But don't forget about that human connection.
Love it.
Right.
That's great.
All right, so let's move into what does the AI say? Did we ever come up with a good name for this?
Ding, 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 ding. What does the AI? No. Okay. Never again. Matt. Never again.
There were some other names that had come up with this, but I don't think we've settled on a good one for our AI segment. But we'll find out.
All right. What'd you come up with? I'm excited.
All right, so here's what I asked it. What are the 10 most absurd conspiracy theories that some Christians believe? Okay. Now, I don't think this is going to be limited to just Christians, because non-Christians also believe conspiracy theories at times.
Yeah.
In addition, some of these, maybe you'll be like, wait, that's not a conspiracy theory. In which case, does that make you the conspiracy theorist?
Yes, it does.
And I'll preface it with this also. Sometimes conspiracy theories turn out to be true. Not all of them, but some of them do. So without further ado, number 10, alien and UFO conspiracies. Some Christians believe in various UFO alien conspiracies, such as the belief that extraterrestrial beings are responsible for various unexplained phenomena, or that they are somehow connected to the end times prophecies in the Bible.
Yeah.
This kind of goes into our aliens episode
about that,
where some Christians link them to demons, in which case they would. Now, is that a conspiracy? I don't know. It would only be a conspiracy if the government knew about it and covered it up. right? Aliens existing is not a conspiracy. That's either a fact.
Well,
or
that's
not.
the whole Area 51 action, right? Is like, what's really going on there?
Right. What does the government know?
Yeah.
So maybe I need to real quick define conspiracy is an intentional falsehood propagated by some entity, usually the government or councils or something, in order to deceive people.
Right. I was just going to name a few more, but I have a feeling they're all going to show up on this list. So.
All right. Yep. Number 9, the New World Order. Some Christians believe that there's a secret plan to establish a new world order in which a one world government and religion will be established.
Right. So where do Christians get that idea from?
The book of Revelation.
Right. Yeah. Kind of interesting.
And so is that a conspiracy theory or is that a prophecy that will happen?
Right.
I guess it depends on how you interpret Revelation.
Is the conspiracy that it's happening right now and our governments are covering it up, but they're secretly like moving to this under the nose of its citizens.
Yes. I would say that that's probably what they would say is that, but that will even happen. Is that a conspiracy theory?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
This one's fun because it's not really a Christian thing. The Mandela effect, number 8. Some Christians believe in the Mandela effect, which posits that certain events or facts have been changed in the past by time travelers or other forces. I don't know if I call that a conspiracy theory.
That's just weird.
The one that always gets me is the Berenstain Bears. Because I feel... Stain as opposed to Steen or Stein. An A instead of an E at the end.
Berenstain.
Now, I think the Mandela effect is probably because we just all have bad memory, honestly.
No, they changed it on us.
Some people
went back and stole the books out of your home library and reprinted them.
So here's how it's explained. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Remember how everybody said the world was going to end in 2012? You remember that? Do you remember that?
2012?
2012 was the Mayan calendar was ending.
Oh, the Mayan calendar.
The world was going to end.
Yep.
They also, in the year 2012, turned on the Large Hadron Collector for the first time, causing massive amounts of quantum weirdness.
Okay.
A lot of people think we destroyed the universe and created an alternate parallel universe that we all live in now, which is why our memories are different because we all got transported into this new universe.
Interesting.
And so the past is actually different here, but it's a multiverse thing.
Okay.
I think that one's true.
So how do you spell Looney Tunes?
Oh, this one, I know it's spelled, which way is it? Now I don't know in my head. T-E-O-O-N-S. No. It's not. It's spelled T-U-N-E-S.
It's
like music.
It's music. Yep.
Yeah. But because we think of cartoon.
Cartoon. Uh-huh.
And tunes can be spelled T-O-O-N-S in a lot of places.
Cartoons.
Right, because of cartoons.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So, all right. Does Mr. Peanut have the monocle? Or the Monopoly Man have a monocle? That's what it is.
You just ruined it.
Does the Monopoly Man?
Mr. Monopoly does not have a monocle.
Right, but Mr. Peanut does.
Mr. Peanut Man does.
That doesn't ruin it because a lot of people think of Monopoly Man as having a monocle.
That's fair. All right.
Number 7, COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Some Christians have been drawn to various conspiracy theories about COVID-19, including the belief that the virus is a hoax or that it was intentionally created in a laboratory. Now, here's where I say sometimes conspiracy theories turn out to be true. Because originally, there was some people saying, oh, this was a lab leak as where it originated, as opposed to the wet market that everybody said it was originated.
Right.
And if you posted anything to that, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter would take that down as misinformation. Whereas now our government and other panels have concluded with high probability that it was the result of a lab leak. Right. Now, that doesn't mean it was an intentionally created virus. Right. It just means there was
like a bioweapon type of thing, right?
That there was just bad security at a lab. It leaked and infected people.
I saw something one time calling your opinion on, not yours, but people's opinion on COVID-19 and whether it was like a hoax or conspiracy, a gateway conspiracy drug.
Oh, that's
because
funny.
That's easy for a lot of people to believe. And then you just open yourself up to probably the rest of these top 10 conspiracies.
Number 6, my favorite, reptilian aliens.
Yes.
Some Christians believe that certain world leaders, such as the British royal family and various politicians, are actually shape-shifting reptilian aliens.
That's kind of cool. Like the scroll.
I wish this would be true. Have you watched the trailer yet for
Secret Invasion? Yeah, it was a good trailer. Good trailer.
I need to watch it.
That's really funny.
So what do you think? Is this a Christian-specific conspiracy or something that you see more with Christians? I know people who have said this.
Really?
Well, maybe I don't know people personally. I've seen people say this online.
Okay. If you actually know them, don't tell me who said that because I will never look at them the same.
No, I don't know anybody.
They're saying that because they're reptilian shapeshifters.
Reptoids.
I love it. All right. What's next?
Number 5, chemtrails. Some Christians believe that the contrails left by airplanes are actually part of a secret government program to spray toxic chemicals into the atmosphere.
Yeah. Yep.
I've heard that a lot before. That's silly.
I agree.
Number 4.
Not with the conspiracy that it's silly.
Thank you. Now, see, this is kind of a repeat. They just give it a name. Illuminati.
Yes.
Some Christians believe in a secret society called the Illuminati, which they believe is working behind the scenes to control world events and establish a one world government.
Yeah. So this is becoming more and more at the forefront. Like I'm seeing this more and more often that the Illuminati is.
We do know somebody who believes in this.
Don't tell me.
I might tell you off air though.
All right. Well,
it's kind of funny.
We'll continue. The Illuminati one. I mean, that could be a fun whole like topic of discussion. And then as Christians, how to respond to these.
Well, right now, why? So this came about me prompting this one because I feel like there are sometimes that Christians are more gullible to conspiracy theories.
Right.
And I want to know why, because honestly, we should be less.
Right.
The Illuminati is an interesting one. I'm sure there are secret organizations in the world. So the question is, what are they actually doing and what are their powers? Like, like these people will say, like,
what are their powers?
Well, are like that they control the music industry. And so secretly artists and actors and musicians are putting Illuminati symbols in there, which if you were secretly doing something, why would you even bother? Why would you put your symbols in it at all? Wouldn't you just not do anything?
Right. Unless it's like this subtle, like subconscious level, like I'm slowly manipulating your mind through my music and my symbols so that when we reveal ourselves, you bow down because it's already deep in your subconscious that we win.
These are things like they just put an eye on a pyramid.
Right.
Or they do
or
like
the triangle symbol.
Signal,
yep.
Like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the secret. Like if you're a secret society, you're a pretty bad one because we all know about you.
It's like if I wink twice with my left eye, then you know. But they don't know that you know.
Number 3, Nibiru or Planet X. Have you heard this one? This is fun. Some Christians believe in the existence of a mysterious planet called Nibiru or Planet X, which they believe will eventually collide with or otherwise cause catastrophic damage to Earth.
That's exciting.
I mean, I don't think you can. How can you be a Christian and believe that there's going to be a planet that hits us and blows us up? That's not really a biblical future that we can anticipate.
Yeah, but don't tell them that.
All right. Now, this one.
It's
number
so
2, I have heard, seen a lot of videos of, and I know one person who has said, I don't believe this, but I can kind of see, and I'm like, yeah. Flat Earth. Some Christians believe that the earth is flat based on a literal interpretation of certain Bible verses.
Right.
I see a lot of flat earth on TikTok, and it's usually biblically like, see, you're going against the Bible if you believe. And I did just also see one woman say, planets don't exist. Planets don't exist. They're all angels and demons.
So does this mean? Oh, that's an interesting approach.
Yeah, not aliens or demons. The planets themselves. When you look up in the sky and you see a little sphere floating around,
that's just like a demon
hanging out. Yep, that's what she said.
Brilliant.
Here's the funny thing about trying to be a flat earther. Like I said, it's the same person who believes in the Illuminati who had said, well, I'm not saying I'm a flat earther, but, and then I was like, oh.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Okay.
That I know. Yeah.
You get it right there. Yep. So, most people who are flat earthers, I still think they believe all the other planets are around because that's hard to deny. Like you look in a telescope and you can see it moving and you can see it rotate.
Yeah. But this other woman that you said, that solves all the problems.
Yeah, that's
everything that makes you think things might be round. It's just demons.
It's just demons. And she based it off, the vision of Ezekiel with like the wheels with the eye in the center.
Oh.
It's like, that's a planet. See? And she had a video. Here's a picture of what these visions look like. Here's a planet. They're the same. But unless you see a big eye in the middle of it, I don't think it's quite the same thing.
Well, unlike the Illuminati, the demon likes to keep a low profile. He keeps his eye closed.
He closes his eye. So I think that why is a flat earth does it come from this desire of like a biblical inerrancy to a certain literal interpretation of parts of it? Like, why Christians buying into this? Because this is also the easiest one to debunk,
right?
And the easiest one to just like it's so implausible.
Are we just that bored with our lives that we have to go searching for wackadoo things?
Yes.
Okay. Instead, share Jesus with people.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Let's just let that be where we focus our time.
Well, these people will share Jesus by saying, do you know the earth is flat? Let me tell you about Jesus. And then all of us Christians get a bad name.
Maybe leave out the earth is flat part and be like,
nope, that's what they have to say. All right. And number one,
all right,
QAnon. Some Christians have been drawn to the QAnon conspiracy theory, which claims that there's a deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump and that he is leading a secret war against a global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles.
Yep.
That's where that pizza thing happened. Did you hear about that?
No.
You never heard about the Pizzagate or something it's called?
Pizzagate?
Pizzagate.
No,
so
but I love pizza.
Well, there was somebody who was a QAnon conspiracy theorist believed that secretly they were sacrificing children in this satanic Illuminati-esque thing. And they had pinpointed the heart of this local ring of QAnon, Satan-worshipping, child sacrificial things was happening at their local pizza place in the basement. And so they got their gun and they went into the pizza place and said, let me into the basement or I'm going to kill all of you. I got to free the kids. I mean, this place didn't have a basement. So the owners were kind of stuck. We don't have a basement. No, I know that's where you're keeping the kids. Yeah. Crazy.
I can't
believe you didn't hear about that.
I just stick my head in the sand.
Well, that's a good one.
The world is wacky and people are crazy. Just give me Jesus.
Yes.
That's all.
It was just
a little bit of coffee and a whole lot of Jesus, right?
I love it. All right. Those are your top 10
and maybe some pizza
conspiracy theories. Let us know. Email podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know what conspiracy theories you believe in, if any, or what you think about those ones, or what else we should ask the AI. Let us know about your Easter plans.
Yeah, and maybe some other myths that you've heard or traditions that you guys do that maybe are abnormal. I'd love to hear about some of those.
Okay, then maybe in July we'll do 4th of July myths.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're at about an hour. I was going to read a little bit of
America's not really a country.
America is actually spelled with a capital O.
There it is.
That's my conspiracy theory about the 4th of July.
What in the world?
Oh, America. I was going to read a couple listener mails. We'll get to those next time. I'm going to save those for next time because there's some good ones in there. And we'll see you then.
Bye, guys.